the third Financial Services Club event of the year. We've started on a high in terms of attendees, which is great. And one of the things we've been focusing on this year is, we've listened to you in terms of what topics people are looking for. So we've already held, the first event was on the European Commission view of Brexit, which is an annual event since the vote, but obviously it was a lot more relevant this year. The last one a few days ago was an evening with Chris Skinner, the chairman of the FS Club. He doesn't appear very often nowadays, so that was a big event as well. We've got this tonight talking about payments and FinTech, which was a big theme that we were asked to put on last year. And we've got some others that I'll talk about a little bit later on coming up for you. So just a reminder, if you please, just a reminder to turn your phones off or to silent so that we don't get disturbed. You're very welcome to take photos though if you wish. And as usual with all of the FS Club events, everything tonight is under the Chatham House rule. So you can talk about what you hear, but you can't quote people unless you've got their specific permission. And we always like to promote lots of often informal discussions and questions and so on tonight. So just please do that, bear that in mind. It's been a year now since we at ZEN took over the management of the Financial Services Club. And we've really looked hard at what we do and kind of what our unique selling point is, if you like. And I'm going to touch on it a couple of times before I hand over to our esteemed speakers tonight. But really, we're just about three things: news, events, and partnerships. And in terms of what our unique selling point is, I mean, there are obviously a lot of organisations that do city events. We think it's about the networking. That's what our members are telling us. What we like best about the events is the ability to have a significant proportion of that event, and it's normally about 50% of the time, just actually networking and getting to know people and using those contacts and so on. And we've got a good team with good skill sets who can help put you in touch with people and so on and so forth. So do bear that in mind. That's very much what we're all about. In terms of, okay. So very quick bit of history for maybe those of you that don't know. The Financial Services Club was set up by Chris Skinner 15 years ago. I think many of you will know Chris. He's a well-known blogger and a commentator on all things financial services and related. In 2018, the Financial Services Club was maybe thinking about winding down because Andy Capel, who's kind of the guy I've inherited all the events part from, was retiring. But with 25 years of experience in the city at ZEN and on finance, which is the part of ZEN that runs the Financial Services Club, just in case you were wondering about the connection, it seemed that we were the perfect partner to take up the reins in terms of the events and so on and so forth. And we're really looking to bring a lot more to the table in terms of benefits for members and opportunities for everyone as well. One of the obvious things that springs to mind is just giving people an awareness of the huge amount of research and reports that are available under the non-finance banner in everything relating to the city. There's a lot of focus on distributed ledger technology, on global indices. So some of you might be familiar with the GFCI index or the Green Index or Smart Cities Index that we've released recently. That all comes under the non-finance banner. And so just bringing that to the table as well is something that we hope is good for members and interested parties. As many of you will know, you don't need to be a member. You can sign up and come to events depending on your level of interest. So let me just talk very, very briefly about the news and events and partnerships. So first of all, news. Many of you will get the daily news email from me, which if you don't, please sign up. It takes 30 seconds, and then that also signs you up for invites for the events as well. So please do sign up for that if you're not getting it already. That's the daily news email. We're creating some customised bulletins, which is the second thing there. You may have seen that on our front of our website. It's effectively, and we're going to be linking it into the level of membership. It's something that it's almost like a customised Google search, only instead of the headline when you do the search, as it does through AI, it does a kind of automated summary of the headline. And if you're interested, you can't read this very small print on there, but there are various categories, and the more, when it's up and running, the higher your membership tier, the more access to more categories you'll have on the news front. There's a chairman's blog, of course, which Chris can be very often entertaining, sometimes controversial, that comes off the back of the daily news. And something we're introducing very shortly, in fact we've already started doing it in our monthly newsletters, is the ability for members to share news on the website. So if you're a member and you've got something that you want to put out over and above your own websites or wherever, if there's any research or white papers or events, we're not proprietary about running events in the city for reasons I mentioned, you can do that through us as well. In terms of events, the Financial Services Club has for 15 years been running events pretty much every 2 weeks. We've taken that on and we're upping our game. So we're using different venues. We're very lucky this year that Michael Mainelli, who was here briefly, I think he's had to go for obvious reasons, who's the Executive Chairman of the ZN Group, is also the Sheriff. He's been elected Sheriff of London, so he's actually got the partner at the Old Bailey, and that helps us get access to the Old Bailey as well. So we've already held one very successful event there. I think that's it in the left-hand picture there. You can see some of the grand surroundings. But we're trying to use as many events as possible. It means that a few people that are used to coming here every 2 weeks have turned up at the wrong place occasionally, so do pay careful attention to the venues, because we're trying to bring in new venues. We introduce a couple of morning sessions, afternoon, lunchtime sessions, and also we'll be introducing things like webinars and so on. And maybe links to some of our members' events as the year goes on. So lots going on in terms of venues. We conducted a survey last year. We'll be sharing the results of that with you. Some of that we're already trying to incorporate as well. And 2020 we hope is going to be very topical in terms of the events. Do keep an eye on our website, and I'll talk briefly about some of the year. And then the third thing, partnerships. So if I'm a bit croaky. So for us, what we want to create in the Financial Services Club is a win-win situation for everyone concerned. That's our unique selling point. It's about networking. So we're entering into partnerships that will help members in terms of potential. For example, we work with the CISI now for CPD points. If you qualify for that, by the way, and you need your certification, this counts as at least an hour. So let us know, and we can give you that certificate. And we'll be talking to other organisations, are already in fact, about other collaborations in that regard. And we're also working with other firms to leverage our relationships. As I say, not particularly proprietary about events. We can help promote other people's events and vice versa. And again, we're trying to create that kind of win-win situation for all. So thank you. Oh, not too far. Not just yet, Scott. Please hold.
Wow. That's the only word for it.
Was that the old one?
No, that was the new one.
That was the new one.
I'll explain that in a
second. Okay, so thanks to our members and sponsors, some of whom are shown here. We've introduced a rather obvious gold, silver, bronze level of membership because it's kind of people like that. It's easy to remember. The biggest differentiating factor, other than the news categories, is how many people you can send to events. So if you're not a member and you're interested in becoming one, please speak to any of us with the badges on. You do get a badge, by the way, if you sign up as a member, so they're quite popular as well. Do speak to us, and we can help you out. So the theme for tonight is payments, FinTech, big topic. We've got some fantastic speakers. I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves, but before I do that, very briefly, the format is Scott is probably going to talk for 7 or 8 minutes, so then we're going to get a little bit from each of the others. And then we really want this to be an interactive session, so I'm going to kind of stay here, I think, most of the time, and if you've got a question, I'll bring the microphone out to you. And we really want it to be an interactive session, so don't be shy, feel free to put your hand up and ask questions once each of the 5 panellists have introduced themselves. And then, finally, before I hand over, I'm looking at the audience, there's probably a few millennials and whatever the Generation X is it. Before we look at the future and kind of where we are now, I think it might just be worth reminiscing on kind of where we were with payments in general. I mean, I'm pretty old now, I've been around the block like probably some of you. And, if I wanted to send a £20 to someone in Edinburgh when I was Morgan's age, I'd have to write out a cheque, first of all. I'll tell you what a cheque is later, Morgan. That's that thing that your gran gives you once a year, right? Then you'd have to buy a stamp, post it, so 2 or 3 days later, if you're lucky, you'll end up in Edinburgh. And if your mate isn't too hungover or whatever, remember he's got to pay it into his bank. Fill out a form, sits around, it goes to this mysterious area for 2 or 3 days. We don't really know what happened to the interest in those days. I don't think anyone did, did they? And then someone would be able to use that cash. So quite a long, involved process. You see how easy it is now. I know it's obvious, but it's just worth thinking how much it's changed just in the very basic payments. We have postals as well. Everyone have postals. What about luncheon vouchers? Does that count? No. Is anyone old enough to remember luncheon vouchers as part of your package? It's only you, Bob. Anyway, sorry, I digress. And then again, you think about credit cards as well. I mean, it doesn't seem that long ago when you had to sign when you put your credit card in. then it was chip and pin, now you're doing that pretty much anywhere. So that's my little bit of reminiscing out of the way. So without further ado, I think we'd like to get straight into to the speakers. Are you coming out here, Scott? Or are you going to stay there?
I'm going to say, are we doing all introductions or just me first?
No, just you, and then we can ask everyone to do their own bit, and then I'll manage any questions
Absolutely.
you have.
So,
there you are, in lights.
So I was, I have a 2-year-old son. This isn't part of the speech, by the way. But I went to, I took him to the Louvre 2 weeks ago. And then last week I had some more new professional photos taken. And I was going for the sort of Mona Lisa enigmatic look, which I think you would say I've nailed, actually. That picture's put 10 years on me, so thank you for that. So, my name is Scott Abrahams. I'm SVP of Business Development for the UK and Ireland for MasterCard. Relatively meaningless job title. What my job is I manage all of our new business and relationships with commercial and business-to-business payments, so big banks, acquirers for here and for Ireland, FinTechs, e-money licenses, prepaid, government, merchants, and gateway customers. So it's all of the things that aren't the big banks issuing cards to consumers. Basically, that's my role, and that role has evolved slightly. I picked up some of the FinTech work a couple of years ago. I'm sure you know a lot about MasterCard, but it's important that I always remind people that MasterCard, we don't issue cards, we don't lend money, and we are a network that connects 2.5 billion accounts with 50-ish million places to use them, both electronically, and in the physical world. One of our great value propositions, to be fair, with Visa and others as well, to your point is, you can use our card product here tonight and fly to Brazil and expect to use it exactly the same way when you land in Brazil. And very few businesses have cracked that travel challenge, if you like. And I always think that's one of our unique points. What I'm going to do just briefly, and it's interesting what you said actually, the pace of change in payments. So in 2006 I worked with Barclays, and I delivered with some of my team one of the very first contactless terminals in 2006. Contactless was bobbling along for years and years, and then TfL took it on, and then the hockey stick has appeared. And that's a great feature, I think, of a challenging feature, probably is the right word, of payments. If I had a pound for every time somebody said to me, or even I said chicken and egg, I wouldn't be working at MasterCard anymore. We have to get the two sides of that network going. And that, I think, is one of the challenges that many of our customers and many of the FinTechs operating in London face. So there's been a huge expansion in FinTech, RegTech, PayTech, challenger banks, aggregators, digital giants, all entering the payment space. Certainly over the last 5 years, and even more so in the last couple of years. And certainly when I look at our business and just the speed of growth from a payments perspective alone, we are very much now, touch wood, riding that hockey stick very far north very quickly. But specifically in the UK, many of my customers are looking to operate everywhere in the globe. So I have a sort of okay knowledge of what's happening in the rest of the world. And I would argue that in the UK, in many ways, we are very much at the cutting and bleeding edge of things, which is very good and also very challenging at the same time. Many of our customers are challenger banks, and they are bringing a huge amount of innovation and exciting new things to the market very quickly. But what I find quite interesting as well is even that market, that competitive space is getting quite tight. I don't know whether you saw, only a couple of hours ago, N26 said they're pulling out of the UK because of Brexit. Okay, but it's quite a tough marketplace, even for a FinTech competing. And I was saying to some of my colleagues here, I would often, I still am, a couple of years ago, I would be on a panel with a number of FinTechs. And I'll be honest with you, there was a an underlying bank bashing going on, if you like, incumbent bashing going on. I don't hear that anywhere near as much as I used to, and I always used to find myself being the defender of the bank. You know, they have a huge amount of legacy infrastructure, they've got branches, they've got a high cost rate, none of which most of the challenges that we work with do have. And what's also happened, I think, from a FinTech perspective, and now that they're facing these challenges, many of them have started with one USP. One, right? Transferring money cross-border. Foreign exchange, free foreign exchange, mentioning no names. And now all of them are obviously having to expand, or thinking about anyway, expanding that option. Expanding that offer into many other areas where they're stepping on, but also not only are they competing against the incumbent banks, but they're actually competing against each other. And many of our customers are now very quickly looking abroad to grow their business. In fact, many of the customers we work with, I'll give you an example. One customer we work with said, I want a license for you MasterCard globally. And I said, okay, well, that's a little tough because there's different regulation. Send me a list of the countries you want to go to. And they sent me a list of 206 countries, which I think is every country in the world, including Iran, including Myanmar. And I said, we need to have a chat about this because there's going to be a couple of challenges. I don't know what your issuing model in Iran is going to be, but it's going to might be a little bit tight. But that's the thing, you know, it's like everywhere now. That isn't a necessarily new thing. I remember talking to Ron Khalifa in your business, and you know, he would always say the strategy for WorldPay is quite easy. It's more world and more pay. So you know, that isn't particularly new, but you know, there's so much opportunity, or they see these fintechs so much opportunity that they don't have to be stifled by, you know, the borders of the UK, the borders of Europe, or anywhere else. I just wanted to give you a couple of examples though, because we were talking about how they compete, but I'll just try and give you a couple of examples of the mindset that the incumbent banks are competing against, if you like. I won't mention names. I went to meet a relatively successful fintech with the head of our US business, so a board member of MasterCard. We had a really good chat. He was brilliant. He explained what's going on in payments in the US, and you know, most, you know, wherever I go, they just have an Apple Mac and they do that. They don't even look up a lot of the time. A lot of the people we speak to, maybe that's just me. And, you know, and then a person said, and I'll make up the name of the city, because they were thinking about the US. What do you think about Miami, Craig? And Craig said, well, it's a big city, there's lots of opportunity there, and, you know, there's some universities, and you know, there's a lot of travellers coming from South America, in particular, from there. And he said, all right, so they wrote that down. And then Craig said to him, so what are your plans for opening in the US? You know, I think he was expecting some sort of 100-page, you know, consulting deck. And one of the people I was with said, well, you just heard it. And he went, what do you mean? He said, well, you just said Miami, so we'll start there. That was it. And you know, we did that here, so therefore here as in the UK, therefore it will be successful somewhere else. And a number of our customers now, one thing I find really interesting, and it really opens the eyes of our more traditional banking customers, if you like. One of the things that a number of our fintechs do, one of the first things they present, they don't talk about customer numbers, they don't talk about growth, they don't talk about where they're going. They compare themselves on a graph to everybody else in terms of how many app updates they make. Right? That is one of their number 1, 2, or 3 KPIs, and they present that to the media. That's, you know, we have done, now some of those updates might just be some bug fixes, they don't care. You know, some of these guys are making 50, 60, 70 a year, right? More than one a week of updates. So that's the new normal, I suppose, when it comes to these things. But I think, you know, as MasterCard, we're very proud of our business here in London. We invested in Vocally a couple of years ago, which obviously facilitates ACH and faster payments, runs the Link ATM network here as well. And that's a business that we are being relatively successful in internationalising. There's a huge, you know, we as MasterCard, one of the reasons we bought Vocally is that we were worried that somebody else might buy Vocally, to be honest with you. And we would, to use a phrase that gets bandied around a lot these days, we'd rather disintermediate and disrupt ourselves. We see a huge trend towards open banking, and in particular, account-to-account push payments, P2P payments. And we want to own the infrastructure of that, potentially a product layer as well, but certainly the infrastructure. That's why we bought Nets. That's why we bought Vocalink, and that's why we plan to buy Nets in the coming couple of months. And then finally, as I say, London. London, I travel a lot and I speak to a lot of my peers. It's hard to tell that there is anywhere in the world more vibrant when it comes to FinTech, in terms of a city to live in terms of lots of rich people kicking around with money to invest, and lots of smart people looking, presenting their new ideas to other smart people. We're really proud to be working in this industry in London, but it obviously puts a huge amount of pressure on the incumbents as well. But at the same time, I do start to see just slightly a trend potentially towards partnership. Because some of these businesses, they cannot survive anymore saying, we're the anti-bank, because they've got millions of customers now. And the law and the regulation is the same for those businesses as it is for Barclays. So, that rhetoric, I think, will change potentially over time. So that's it from me. I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
So I'm Nicole Olby. I head up payment partnerships for Barclays Payments. Thank you, Scott, for being the defender of the big banks. We absolutely appreciate it. One-man army. And look, hopefully the title, there's a clue in the title in terms of what our approach is from a bank perspective. So when I say I head up payment partnerships, it covers the acquiring side, it covers the gateway side, it also covers more recently our corporate card and virtual card business. So it spans both, if you think about it, as payments in and payments out. And so really for us, I think many people would look at the challenges and the disruptors and think that we would be quite defensive around how things are moving in the market. Honestly, I think it has changed significantly. I am enrolled very specifically to look at these partnerships and ensure that where we aren't going to build core functionality or potentially buy core functionality, that we will absolutely be partnering. And that's with the lens of providing a great end-to-end proposition for our customers, and those customers being merchants or the end-user card holder. So I think we are stitching together our capability as a bank far better than we ever have before. And I think that will drive some real change in terms of how we're perceived in the industry and the types of deals you'll see us doing. I think for me, in terms of the challenger banks, absolutely, to Scott's point, they're really agile. They can bring new tech out really quickly. They have an open approach to their technology, which means from an open API perspective, they let other FinTechs innovate on their behalf. And that's really exciting to be able to actually leverage some of that capability. But they do look to us, to Scott's point, to be that ability to give them scale, to give them that stability. We've got incredible distribution and obviously a pretty strong brand. And so we do find that there is a way for us to work together to ensure that we increase flows to everybody. And again, back to the point, it is around providing a great end-to-end customer experience. And I think what you'll see from us as a what is more a traditional bank, you'll see a trend away from needing to own the end-to-end customer journey and seeing us be more interested and keen to enable customer end-to-end journey. So I certainly think that there has been a change of the guard. It's been happening over a period of time. And so, as you said, I think back in the day, there was probably an us against them, FinTech versus bank sentiment. I think now you'll find that we've really moved far more into a collaborative partnership and seeing how we can do things differently together to drive better and more positive outcomes. And, you might be sitting there cynically going, sure, believe you, how invested are you really in terms of FinTechs and disruptors? I'll simply point you to two of our big programs that we deliver. So one is Eagle Labs and the other one being our Rise Accelerator. And that's where we work really, really closely with startups and FinTechs to give them the backing that they need, the mentorship that they need, and just the springboard so that they can become successful. So I think we've been a business that has long-term invested in innovation and we will continue to do that.
Hi, my name's Steve. I'm a co-founder of Currency Cloud and run the strategic partnerships team. As is always the way when I'm speaking here, I seem to be losing my voice, so keep it quite quick. We set Currency Cloud up to answer two questions. In fact, it was what would become Currency Cloud? Why is it? Why is there so much disparity and inconsistent pricing and opacity in foreign exchange pricing? And why is it more expensive and more nerve-wracking sending a payment overseas than it is to send a package via UPS? But to Scott and Nicole's point, we've never subscribed to bank bashing. We've always relied very heavily on our banking partners. In fact, Barclays has been with us since the beginning, actually. And Currency Cloud, we set the business up to automate the business process around collection of one currency, conversion into another, and then the onward distribution. And we saw an opportunity to do things in a more consistent and more streamlined and efficient manner using the internet, this thing called cloud computing, and a suite of APIs. And effectively, we don't sell to the end customer, we provide services to intermediaries. So if any of you have used companies like Revolut, Monzo, Starling, not 26, they're the one that we didn't work with, but if any of you have relationships with them, we fulfill some of their international transactions to some extent or another. More recently, we've partnered with Scott's friends across the street at Visa, which is...
I thought you meant Diners Club for a minute.
Oh, them, yeah. Go on, sorry.
That's been a coming together. We're a 250 people strong organisation at the moment. Following the investment, we'll be 350 by the end of the year, but 250 people versus, 17,000? It's been challenging and interesting and exciting and terrifying all at the same time. But we're collaborating with Visa to solve a very real problem, and that is to help the big banking establishment, traditional banks, become digital transformers and offer a more challenger bank style functionality to their existing customers. So it's kind of come full circle. We built a business and built our name on servicing digital natives and digital first organisations, but now we're helping the digital transformers kind of come back and compete on even terms. So it's interesting times. But I'll pass over to John.
Thanks, Stephen. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jana McIntosh, and as Scott alluded to, I work for a company called WorldPay, which hopefully most of you might have heard about. I still call it a proud FinTech, and in particular UK FinTech that was started end of the 90s, beginning of 2000s. And it was kind of at the kind of forefront of thinking about how we want to move money into a digital age, how we're going to buy things online. And the company has grown and changed quite substantially. And if you've followed some of the kind of some of the news, you've known that we were kind of acquired twice in the last 3 years, which kind of gives you a bit of sense in terms of what's happening in payments and consolidation driving scale and growth and all of these things that we just talked about. So we are now part of FIS, the FIS group, which will be a name that most of you will be familiar with as well. So back office, tech and banking originated in the US, and WorldPay is now part of that group as kind of the merchant division that can still service our retail customers across the globe. Really, we talk about global. I think we've gone from kind of more world to WorldPay to just absolutely everything. It is a true kind of like global fintech success story. FIS is a fairly kind of large organisation now. We kind of 92 billion market cap. We serve 20,000 plus kind of organisations across the globe. But I think part of the kind of mantra, part of our mentality is still very much kind of fintech, thinking like how we innovate, how we're going to move the debates forward. And the two things that I want to kind of add to the conversation tonight, which would be great to get people's views on, and I'm sure others have questions on it as well. But I head up our government affairs and public policy practice, so I kind of think about it from a policy point of view, from a regulatory point of view, and how it is that in the UK, as was rightly said, we've managed to get it right. I mean, payments policy in the UK kind of leads the way that organisations have established themselves, have grown. If it wasn't for PSD2, and I know all PSD is kind of like slightly, I'm scorned by PSD2 at the moment, but if it wasn't for PSD in the first place, companies like Wolfo wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be there, we wouldn't have been able to grow to what it is that we've managed to grow to. And so there's part of me that kind of appreciate what it is that regulation and decent kind of policy can do. And I'm kind of hoping that what we've done for payments will be FinTech in the same vein, but it really kind of requires all of us who are the subject matter experts, who operate in payments, who knows how it works, to help those regulators shape those conversations so we end up in the right place. So the two things really for me this evening is, as we're going to go into this year, there's a big kind of focus on how do we move the conversation from startup to scale up. We've been great in the UK. We talk about kind of like our fantastic FinTech landscape. We've got kind of thousands of FinTechs that have been kind of born out of the UK, but we're really only going to make a difference if it is that we can get these organisations to scale to a place where they actually do start making a difference. And so what makes that leap? What helps and support these organisations to truly kind of become, scale FinTechs in their own right? And the second part of that, and really kind of supportive of that argument, you're going to hear people and policymakers at the moment talking about FinTech and what is FinTech 2.0, how do we take that forward, and breaking that down into its component parts is really where we need to get to. I mean, I'd be surprised to know if it's most organisations operating in financial services at the moment is not going to focus on technology. Real FinTech plays one way or the other. I mean, the term is not going to really advance the conversation. You need to know, well, if you want to talk about FinTech, what do you want to talk about? Are we focused and do we want to advance the support in terms of capital to help organisations grow? Is it about expansion cross-border, internationally? I don't think I've spoken to one FinTech that doesn't have that ambition. Is it about the business model? Because there's a lot in the business model that evolved in the way that we think about FinTechs. They look and feel and kind of act like banks. They're really not non-banks. They just kind of do it slightly differently. It's the business model. We're still talking about the same thing. There's a lot that we're talking about in terms of skills. There's a lot that we're talking about in terms of regulation. So we need to break that down and really help people understand where do we focus our attention to move this conversation forward. And I think that's really kind of where some of at least my questions sit, but what I'm hoping the conversation will bring. So that's a couple of things just for me tonight.
Hi, I'm John Doyle from the payments business. We have two strands to our business. One is that we're in the information dissemination business, which is primarily what we do, which is that we make sure that everybody knows about what's happening in the industry, because there's lots of changes. I mean, the changes in the payments industry in the last 5 years have been phenomenal in terms of new regulations and things like that. And one of the great things about that is because I'm a great fan of unintended consequences, and there's a lot of stuff that's come out of what was sensible, good intentioned regulatory changes, which has opened up opportunities for people that you never even imagined would happen. So what the payments business does is we try to get that information out there, tell you who you should be talking to if you want to have a specific conversation with people about specific topics and things like that. So we're kind of an advisory kind of information dissemination group. So that's one thing we do. But what I've been doing recently is I've been doing a number of payment reviews. So I'm more of the cold face than my colleagues up here, which is that people come to me and they say, John, our payments processing costs are very high. The traditional model is that you have a way of submitting your payments. You use a kind of gateway, and you use the gateway to talk to a sponsoring bank, and the sponsoring bank then talks into the schemes. Very traditional, very legacy driven, very effective, very strong, very resilient, and a good way of doing things. But it is quite expensive to some of the smaller banks. So I've been approached by a number of smaller banks, not the big the tier 1 banks, but the tier 2 banks, especially the tier 3s, foreign banks, bureaus, payment bureaus, and people like that, who are saying to us, well, what can we do to get our costs down? And to do that, of course, there are lots of opportunities of working in fintechs. So you can now put together a solution for people using fintech technology and solutions quite easily and run it in the cloud. In that kind of thing. You know, people say this is disintermediating the banks, but it's not really. What it is adding value to what the banks do and building on their success and their strength to add, to provide value-added services. So I've been working, as I say, a lot with the smaller banks, as I say, in the area of trying to make their payment system more resilient, more cost-effective, more compliant with the regulations. I mean, if you're a small bank, or you're a payments processor of a large corporate, it's a nightmare trying to keep up with the regulations. An absolute nightmare. You've got so many changes. Where do you make your changes, your standards changes? Just your very basic simple standards changes. Like everyone's talking about moving to ISO 20022. Those of us in the industry know that that's a good move. It frightens the life out of most of the people that are out in the industry, because it means that all these legacy systems are going to have to be changed again, all the enterprise systems are going to have to be changed again, and all that kind of thing. So there's a space in there for people in the fintech area where we can help them get into that space. So payment reviews is a lot of what I do, and as I said, it's much more of a cold face than some of these guys here. So that's what I put up on these two slides, which I think you'll get through an email, which is just to show you that one of the main reasons that people look at fintechs is because the gateway, and that's the important thing, is the gateway in a solution like this is the thing that gives you the things like the dashboards to know what's going on, the ability to set up workflows, and all that kind of thing, which makes your payments processing more efficient and actually turns it into a revenue partner for business, which is, again, a big thing that I come across quite a lot. So,
Okay, thank you.